Hi and welcome everyone. My name is Amy Basnett and I'm the Head of Programs with Eco Markets Australia. Today I'm joined by my colleagues Bob Spears, Chair of our Technical Advisory Committee, Kate Salmon, Program Officer with the EMA, and Goslik Shepherd, the CEO of Eco Markets Australia. Thank you all for joining our Unpacking ACWIS technical webinar. Eco Markets Australia acknowledges the traditional owners of country and their enduring connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to country, its people, cultures and elders past and present. And we acknowledge the Yagara and Turrbal people on whose lands we are presenting today. So thank you all so much for your time. Today we'll be going through our launch of the Australasian Catchment Water Improvement Standard. So firstly, I'll be introducing Eco Markets Australia and provide an overview of the ACWIS. We'll then hear from Bob Spears, the Chair of the TAC, who will discuss the importance of upholding integrity, the role of the Technical Advisory Committee and providing technical insights into the development of the ACWIS. Kate will discuss the process for methodology development and announce our first two which are underway. Goslik Shepherd, the CEO, will provide an overview for market demand and investor interest, and then lead us through a panel Q&A session. So please submit questions at any time through the webinar, and we'll collate these and try and get through as many as possible in the remaining time. For those we don't get to, we will create an FAQ, which we've made available through our website at a later stage, along with today's webinar recording. So starting off, the global nature problem. Setting the scene. There is a significant, probably $700 billion annual funding gap, which threatens global nature restoration and protection goals. While government plays a key role, private capital is essential. To support this, several frameworks and regulations have emerged, such as the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, which aligns with mandatory frameworks like the EU's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. We've also had the Treasury Law Amendments Act introduced earlier this year, which requires large businesses to publish annual sustainability reports with climate-related financial disclosures aligned with ISSB standards phased in until 2030. We also had the EU Nature Credit Roadmap released in July, which encourages private investment in biodiversity and ecosystem restoration through market-based incentives. And this really shows the signal at an international level for the importance and the potential role of high-integrity voluntary nature credit markets. So why do voluntary nature markets matter? They incentivise best management practice, drive private investment to close the funding gap. They help investors meet environmental obligations and provide mechanisms for nature positive outcomes and water quality offsets. They improve sustainability, risk management and ESG compliance, and they enable co-investment for cost efficiency and diversified income streams. So we need multiple approaches, including voluntary nature markets, which are needed to mobilise private finance and achieve global restoration targets. So this leads us to Eco Markets Australia. We were established in 2020 as an independent not-for-profit registered charity. EMA administers voluntary nature markets to enable private investment in nature, ensuring integrity, governance and transparency for measurable, independently verified environmental outcomes. Today, we're also introducing our Envomark, the trusted mark for nature credits. We launched this just last week. And what it means is each Envomark credit represents a quantified, verified environmental outcome that has already occurred. The Envomark is a consistent mark of integrity, assurance, transparency and rigour, providing confidence to investors and to the market that all methodologies, projects and schemes administered by Eco Markets have been Envomark assured according to our value nature framework. EMA is based in Brisbane, with a governance structure inclusive of our skills-based board of directors who provide strategic risk compliance and financial oversight. The secretariat, made of Kate and myself, who administer schemes under standards including methodology approval, project registration, credit issuance and registry management. We also have our wonderful technical advisory committee chaired by Bob, who is joining us today. They offer independent technical expertise on our standards, methods through peer review and public consult and compliance. Our core functions as EMA is that we administer standards for market participation, we assess and approve science-based methodologies, we validate and issue credits based on actual measured independently verified outcomes, we manage a public-facing registry for providing registration and credit tracking, and we maintain independence by not developing projects or selling credits themselves, and the credit pricing is market-driven. We align ourselves in both national and international best practice, such as these on your screen at the moment. The Envomark is, as I said, Eco Markets Australia's assurance of integrity through our value nature framework, and is backed up by our alignment with global best practice, as well as our integrity guardrails. So these include ensuring transparency through public access to project and credit data via the Eco Markets Registry, independent validation and verification through third-party entities confirming environmental outcomes, monitoring, reporting and verification, which protects the use of rigorous, where projects use rigorous scientific methods and transparent metrics. And we have independent credit issuance. Credits are issued independently from project developers with unique identifiers to prevent double counting. We manage for additionality, where credits represent outcomes that wouldn't occur without the program. Durability or permanence, where methodologies include measures to manage or compensate for reversals. And leakage prevention, where projects must assess and mitigate risks of displacing negative impacts elsewhere. So despite being voluntary, these markets are subject to rigorous scrutiny, where every credit is verified. And it reflects real, measurable and achieved environmental outcomes assured by our Envomark. So to give a brief update on the Reef Credits Scheme, this is just a brief snapshot. So Reef Credits is a world-first water quality market that incentivises best practice and land management change to reduce the flow of pollutants to the Great Barrier Reef. Reef Credits focus on 2 water quality targets under the Reef 2050 Water Quality Improvement Plan to reduce dissolved inorganic nitrogen loads by 60% and fine sediment loads by 25%. We often get asked questions about who's buying, where the demand is, how many. So this slide has been really useful for that. So we have seen over 90% of credits purchased by corporate and other non-government organisations such as Qantas and HSBC, which has resulted in over 3.2 million in investment back into reef catchment projects. Over 60 tonnes of dissolved inorganic nitrogen has been prevented from entering the Great Barrier Reef. And of over 60,000 credits issued, we've seen 41,832 credits retired and sold. We have approved around 5 methodologies under our Reef Credit Scheme dealing with dissolved inorganic nitrogen and sediment. And we've also just launched at the in May this year, our Reef Credit Scheme, which is our first biodiversity scheme. And this has been a really incredible step, which ensures that credits can reward the quality First Nations participation, and we're very proud to be administering that scheme. And these are all Envomarked, so we value nature. And the Envomark, as I mentioned, represents a trusted, transparent and quantified scheme. So moving on to why we're here today, our greatest icons. So water quality degradation across Australasia's catchments is a growing concern threatening ecosystems, communities and industries. The 2024 State of Environment Report highlights declining inland water quality due to pollution, land use pressures and climate change. These challenges demand innovative, scalable solutions that go beyond traditional regulation and funding models. Eco Markets Australia's Water Improvement Scheme, delivered through the ACWIS or Australasian Catchment Water Improvement Standard, responds to this need by introducing a market-based mechanism to incentivise pollutant reduction activities. These initiatives build on the 5 years of experience administering the Reef Credit Scheme, which has shown successful market demand and amazing projects delivered on ground for environmental outcomes. And it aims to expand measurable water quality improvement across diverse catchment settings. The scheme enables the generation of water improvement credits, which represent verified additional reductions in pollutants such as sediment, nutrients or other catchment-specific contaminants. These credits are quantified using approved methodologies, independently audited and tracked via a secure registry. This structure ensures transparency, integrity and scalability, making the scheme suitable for voluntary and compliance markets. The scheme aligns with national and regional frameworks like the National Water Quality Management Strategy and Water Quality Improvement Plans, supporting both environmental targets and broader goals such as the UN Sustainable Development Goal. It also emphasises the inclusion of First Nations people in methodology and project design, integrating Indigenous knowledge and practices. The ACWIS leverages the success of the Australian Government's Natural Heritage Trust Coastal Catchment Initiative, if anyone's been around as long as I have. This was a $34 million program implemented across all levels of government and NRM organisations. The CCI supported the development of a limited set of water quality improvement plans for priority coastal waterways, as demonstrated in the top corner of the map of Australia. And these QIPs were for priority coastal waterways based on conservation significance, whether Ramsar wetland or World Heritage Site, or the iconic values of a coastal locality such as high recreational value that are threatened by land-based sources. So we are pleased to announce that Ecomarkets Australia Board approved and launched the Envomark Assured Australasian Catchment Water Improvement Standard on the 6th of November. What this means in practice is that Ecomarkets Australia now oversees all market functions, including Envomark assurance and approval of methodologies according to EMA's Value Nature Framework submitted under the ACWIS, project validation and registration, validation of third-party verified monitoring period reports and issuance of credits, and the tracking, transfer and retirement of credits through the Ecomarkets Australia registry, helping ensure transparency and integrity at every step. Additionally, EMA is in communication with several state government agencies and methodology developers across multiple states as we look to enable and develop activated water improvement markets collaboratively throughout Australasia, based on the experience administering the Reef Credits Scheme. So the scope. The ACWIS supports projects that improve water quality in Australasian catchment settings, generating credits for verified pollutant reductions. But Kate will talk more to the methodologies underway later. So the ACWIS standard guide and definitions is now available through the EMA website for you to download. A quick overview of the roadmap for development. Obviously, in 2020, we took on administration of Reef Credits Scheme. Over 60,000 credits have been issued over the time, and our first gully project was registered this year. Reef Credits will continue on, but as of July, we drafted our ACWIS, which went through public consultation. Thank you all so much for those who contributed. The feedback was fantastic. The ACWIS was approved by the EMA board in October and launched last week. And we now have an open EOI for water improvement methodologies. And next year we look to develop the market outside the Great Barrier Reef catchment. So the ACWIS key aspects. So we recognise the extensive diversity of water pollutant types and the variation in water quality improvement plans or comparable strategies with objectives, targets and caps applying to defined catchment settings. So this standard enables multinational coverage of defined catchment settings. It offers diverse pollutants. Methodologies can be finessed for application in alternative defined catchment settings. Conversion factors will be progressively determined through peer review and public consultation, and I'll let Bob talk more about the technical aspect of this later. Water improvement credits can be uniquely tracked provenance linked to the right to claim the benefit achieved. They are stackable with other nature credits to support project co-investment, and it is a companion scheme alongside the Reef Credit Scheme, which continues. Methodologies are obviously projects operating under the ACWIS must use an approved water improvement methodology. Methodologies may be developed for any practice change or ecosystem repair activity that is within scope, and within scope activities are acceptable for a defined catchment setting under the ACWIS are those activities that are specified within the water quality improvement plan or comparable strategy for that setting, or for a river basin for which environmental values and water quality objectives have been set under regulatory instruments. The scope of the ACWIS does not include greenhouse gas emissions or biodiversity. It is, however, possible to undertake other ecosystem service projects, including carbon, biodiversity and renewable energy projects over the same area subject to the requirements set out in the ACWIS. So what is a water improvement credit? It is a quantified and verified amount of pollutant that has been prevented from impacting the asset of concern in the defined catchment setting. It is equal to an amount of pollutant reduction verified during a monitoring period. It is measured in a suitable metric or unit which quantifies the amount of pollutant, and it is converted into water improvement credits by applying the relevant conversion factor. The process: standards set the rules for each market, what qualifies and how it's measured. Methodologies provide detailed instructions for achieving environmental outcomes. Any appropriately skilled individual or group can develop methodologies, which then face peer review and public consultation prior to approval. Projects are the on-ground activities where landholders and proponents implement environmental outcomes under approved methodologies with regular monitoring verified by independent auditors. Credits are issued only after this verification confirms the environmental outcomes have been achieved and recorded on our soon-to-be blockchain-enabled registry, providing complete transparency and traceability. And this altogether forms our Envomark Assured Value Nature Framework. Just as a final visual, what we are suggesting, obviously, through the ACWIS is that the relevant water quality improvement plan or comparable strategy for that defined catchment setting provides the targets, the in-scope activities, which a methodology can be approved under the ACWIS to enable the reduction of those prioritised targets and pollutants for pesticides, fine sediments, nutrients, microplastics, whatever are those priority pollutants of concern within that regional setting. And that will be equated into a defined catchment setting credit, whether that be a Reef Credit, a Moreton Bay Credit, a Sydney Harbour Credit, or a Swan Canning Credit, or a Murray-Darling Basin Credit. There's a lot of opportunity out there. And at that, I will hand over to Bob Spears, the Chair of our Technical Advisory Committee.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks very much. And thanks, everyone. G'day, and thanks for joining us. I really appreciate you being with us today. There's been a lot of work to get to this point, and then there's still plenty of work ahead. So my name's Bob Spears. So I chair the Technical Advisory Committee for Eco Markets Australia. And on the slide at the moment, colleagues on the Technical Advisory Committee. So Jane Waterhouse has been with us since the start of Reef Credits, and Jane, as many people know, particularly engaged in the science of reef water quality, and has involved in a private sector capacity, but also with strong links into James Cook University. David Pennell, Dave's an academic with the University of Western Australia, a resource economist with a particular interest in practice change and social change processes. Ian Prosser is ex-CSIRO, retired now like me, and he's a hydrologist and a water quality specialist. Lynn's a colleague with a senior executive in the Department of Primary Industries, currently working in the horticulture and forestry areas particularly, but with a long history at the crossover between science and policy. Kim Whiteack, Kim's in private practice. He's a natural systems economist and environmental market economist. And Michelle Burford is with Griffith University as a professor there, and she's a specialist in freshwater ecology and freshwater systems. So that's those of us that are currently on the Technical Advisory Committee at the moment. So go next slide, Amy. So what do we do? So the Technical Advisory Committee is a group of colleagues that provide specialist advice to support the EMA Secretariat and Board in relation to the technical workings of the methodologies and the standards and the markets generally. Like, for instance, I mentioned Kim as an economist gives us very valuable advice in economic market matters. So what do we do? One of the primary roles has been to provide technical assessment of the methodologies as they come through, and that's been to have a quick look at methodologies coming through, give some direct advice, and then take those methodologies through peer review and through public review, through 30 days of public review. So what we look to do is to be able to provide the Secretariat and the Board with assurance that the methodologies going forward are state of the art, and we do that with any necessary caveats around that, and sometimes they are that we'll be learning by doing, and that methodologies will continue to improve as they go forward, and we make that completely transparent. But we find ourselves working to a very large extent at the edge of knowledge, at the edge of practice, and we greatly value outreach amongst our colleagues right across the spectrum. So what we look for when we're going through the methodologies and through the standards is that they are technically rigorous, that they have scientific merit, that there's enough data and information in order to calibrate and to validate the results that are coming through the calculations within the machinery of these instruments. We want to look also as to whether or not they're feasible, whether they make sense on the ground, and also that they have a real impact on the environmental outcomes. One of the things we've seen is that markets pretty much live or die on integrity, on the independence of the decisions that are being made, that they're not arbitrary or unreasonable, that they're transparent, and that the evidence that backs up the benefit behind a credit is real. And so we focus to a very large extent on making sure that what people purchase in a credit is backed up by evidence of the benefit that's actually been achieved by the time they buy the credit that they need for claiming purposes. And Amy, the third slide, please. So I mentioned there's a lot of work gone into where we are now, but there's also a lot of work ahead. When you look under the bonnet of the standard, you'll see that there are three things which are sort of edge of practice at the moment, and that we have a way forward on dealing with those. The first one is the defined catchment settings, because with Reef we have a defined catchment setting under Reef Plan 2050. However, the ACWIS is capable of providing for markets right across the landscape. So what we're looking at doing is to be able to define a catchment setting. The standard doesn't define the catchment setting. The catchment settings are defined by third parties, either through water quality improvement plans or through other comparable instruments which set aside an area of concern, assets, at-risk assets of concern. And then once water quality defined catchment settings been defined, then the standard can be applied. The second area we deal with is the methodologies. So we've got methodologies, as Amy's mentioned, under Reef Credits, and we've got also new methodologies coming forward directly under ACWIS. But in order to be able to move a methodology and apply it in a different catchment setting, there will need to be adjustments. Now, those adjustments involve a range of challenges, and what we're looking to do is to work with colleagues to make sure that the methodologies move smoothly across and can be applied consistently across defined catchment settings. The third thing is conversion factors, like what actually sits behind the value of a credit. The way we're dealing with that is that we will be developing those within the process of developing the methodologies that need to apply within the defined catchment settings, and that because they sit within that process, they go through peer review and through public consultation basically to have them properly interrogated and their acceptability properly assessed. So with the conversion factors, the way we're dealing with those are that the conversion factors would rely upon a principle of reasonable beneficial equivalence. Ultimately, that the value behind a catchment improvement credit would be of equivalent value, regardless of the fact that it might be for fine sediment or for plastics or for chemicals or for a whole range of different pollutants within a system. So this idea of being able to properly explore and substantiate beneficial equivalence or reasonable beneficial equivalence is critical to it. So to do that, we rely upon the relevant targets or caps that have been set within catchment plans or strategies for the defined catchment settings, or the extent to which we have environmental values and water quality objectives set under a regulatory instrument where there are metrics attached that can be used in order to quantify the benefit that would sit behind a credit. The third thing we take into account is the fact that we have a 5-year pedigree on the value of one Reef credit. one reef credit being the value of reducing 1 kilogram, or the impact of 1 kilogram of dissolved inorganic nitrogen on the Great Barrier Reef as a receiving environment, as an asset of concern. So it will continue to be a reference value for what one credit should be worth as we go through these processes of developing conversion factors for methodologies as they roll out across the scheme. And as I say, this process will go through the rigour that we've had established for more than 5 years now of peer review and public consultation in developing the methodologies to go forward, so that the methodologies can earn the Envomark of assurance. So I'll pass over now to Kate. Kate, a colleague, to take us through the methodology work that we've been doing, please.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Amy. And jump to this next slide. Okay, so I'm going to go through some of the Secretariat processes and the new methodologies that we've already been in conversation with. The 9 points in this slide that you can see summarise the review and approval process. Any methodology or standard submitted to EMA will follow. The Secretariat oversees this process, which demonstrates the level of rigour involved as documentation is reviewed through the Technical Advisory Committee, public consultation, peer review and final EMA board approval. The time this process takes is dependent on the draft documentation submitted to the TAC at point 2. The level of feedback received through the public consultation and peer review process can also affect the timeline. On average, it may take around 6 to 12 months to proceed through to approval and publication, considering the revisions needed along the way. Once a methodology or standard is approved by EMA, revisions may be brought forward periodically by the developer, Secretariat or a third party. The methodology application and review procedure for ACWIS is available on request and will be uploaded to the EMA website along with other relevant templates in the coming weeks. We are currently developing an EMA claims guidance, which will be complemented alongside a full suite of EMA documents to support our markets and participants. The Grazing Land Management, or GLM methodology for fine sediment reduction under reef credits was led by Viterra and supported by Green Collar and AgriProve. The method is being adjusted for application to defined catchment settings under ACWIS. The project results at the farm gate, or the project area boundary, will be calculated uniformly across defined catchment settings. However, the methodology will be adjusted if and as appropriate for each defined catchment setting to apply an approved benefit attenuation factor, the delivery ratio, where the project is distant from the asset of concern. Likewise, in calculating the number of credits generated, the methodology will apply the conversion factor for fine sediment approved for the defined catchment setting in which the project is located. Viterra is currently working with the EMA Technical Advisory Committee and holding conversations around the transition to ACWIS. This work includes aligning GLM data structures and workflows with the ACWIS standard. This will lead to seamless connection between project crediting and the broader catchment area. Next steps for GLM will include a pilot integration of GLM and drover workflows under ACWIS standard, along with developing case studies to support landholder engagement and transparency. The other methodology we've been engaging with, the Reef Catchment Science Partnership, RCSP, is in the early stages of discussions with EMA to explore the development of a pesticide methodology. This initiative would leverage the risk scores generated by the pesticide projector, providing a science-based foundation for quantifying pesticide-related improvements in catchment management. This would be submitted for Envomark certification and approval under the ACWIS through EMA's methodology application and approval process, which ensures that methodologies are robust, transparent and aligned with national standards for environmental markets. Through this early planning and engagement with EMA, it is positioning RCSP to contribute technical expertise and stakeholder insights to shape a credible and impactful methodology. The proposed pesticide methodology will be underpinned by a scientifically robust aquatic risk assessment framework developed through RCSP's pesticide projector. This framework quantifies the environmental risk posed by individual pesticide active ingredients using 3 core metrics. You can see them on the slides. One is measure of effect. This metric estimates the potential for a pesticide active ingredient to cause harm to aquatic organisms. It is calculated by dividing the maximum application rate of the active ingredient by its aquatic toxicity. Higher measure of effect values indicate a greater likelihood of environmental harm due to increased toxicity and/or application rates. Number 2, measure of mobility and persistence. This metric reflects the likelihood that a pesticide active ingredient will be transported from land to the water and persist in the environment. Higher values suggest greater potential for runoff and environmental persistence. 3, the aquatic risk score. The overall aquatic risk score is calculated by multiplying the measure of effect by the measure of mobility and persistence. This score provides an integrated estimate of the likelihood that a pesticide will reach aquatic environments, persist and cause ecological harm. Pesticide active ingredients with lower scores are considered less harmful and may be eligible for credit generation, while those with higher scores may be targeted for risk reduction interventions. With that now, I'll hand over to Goslik Shepherd, our CEO, to talk about market drivers and next steps. Thanks, Gos.
Thanks, Kate. I appreciate it. Quick shout out to all the attendees. This is your 5-minute warning to think about questions. That'll open up towards the end of this next section. So it comes to me towards the end here to talk a little bit about what the market outlook is and the way we're viewing this process within eco markets. We're really happy that the Reef Credit Program is starting to establish a more mature marketplace, specifically around the dissolved inorganic nitrogen methodology, and we'll soon see greater impacts as well from the gully methodology, which was initiated recently in the news from both Green Collar and Viterra. So we're happy to announce, and we did in our newsletter recently, that the dissolved inorganic nitrogen credit value has steadily increased over the time that it hit the market a few years ago, and we expect that to level out at some point. We're not really sure where the gully methodology will come in, and until we have the data, we really can't report on the value of the gully methodology towards reef benefits in our marketplace. The new methodologies behind that as well is wastewater remediation, and in fact they had recently approved an amendment to their methodology to allow them to do quarterly issuance instead of yearly, and so that was approved also very recently. So we expect those programs also to generate more credits in the marketplace. Pleasingly, in the marketplace as well, we're starting to see the emergence of an overhang of buyers for the credits that are coming online. And this is evidenced by a multi-year credit pre-purchase agreement that's been put in place for DIN credits that are coming online over the next 3 to 5 years. The federal government also has recently recognised reef credits as a bona fide offset under the sediment reduction methodology for programs that in ports and alike that are producing sediment in the Great Barrier Reef catchment. This is an important valuation step in the process of our business and our reef credits, demonstrating the robust and the transparent nature of these credits and meeting the requirements for the federal government's Reef Trust. So that's all within the Reef Credit Scheme. We also see expansion beyond just reef credits, and that's what the ACWIS signals. It's the opportunity to do similar or different types of methodologies, but in different catchment settings. So that's really what we'd call a territory expansion process, whether that's into the Moreton Bay region in southeast Queensland, across Australia, New Zealand, or possibly internationally. I don't expect that it's a simple lift and replace for methodologies in reef, and that's a conversation that I recommend you have with the Secretariat if you're contemplating using methodologies in new catchment settings, as you've heard today. I think there's also an interest in expanding the credit types that exist under the Envomark assured process. That allows you then to also capture biodiversity programs like the Cassowary Credit Scheme. We're also looking and responding to the market in soil and possibly carbon, and excitingly in an area called country credits as well, where we're looking to credit improvements in First Nations culture or contribution to nature repair and regeneration. Finally, we are investigating a market activation fund. This is an opportunity where a fund can provide money early on in the process in an offtake form, and that fund would then be replenished when those credits are sold at a higher price at a later date. The idea is to have an evergreen fund and put more money into the top of the funnel, which we know is a major issue for all of the work that you guys do. So this gives you a bit of a sense on where we're viewing the stacked credit environment for us. We'll probably align our standards to consist of stacked credits across various axes, and then you'll have multiple credit schemes within each of those. So underwater, you already have Reef, but we're expecting under the ACWIS program to have additional have additional credit schemes that are addressing new catchment setting challenges. Similarly, in biodiversity, we can imagine there'd be broader biodiversity credit schemes in the new year once we release our national biodiversity standard. We welcome any further feedback from the marketplace on what we think is important to improving nature resilience and regeneration, as well as contributing to society and people on country. So that sort of summarises briefly our perspective of the world. We're going to move into a Q&A session, and so I welcome